Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited that you're here and very excited to be sharing today's video. In my last video, which was centered around lunch, I asked, would you guys be interested in seeing a week's worth of breakfast ideas? And a lot of people said yes. So of course I had to create a video specific to breakfast so that you can have some ideas for the week. I recorded 5 different breakfast meals that I have been enjoying recently and wanted to share them with you. These are ideas that can either be meal prepped, ingredient prepped, or if you have a little bit of time in the kitchen before you head out to work, before you start working at home, or even on the weekends. These are meals that I know you will enjoy. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into these plant-based breakfast ideas that I know you will love. I'll be honest, I am trying some new recipes in this video, but I figured if I encourage people to get creative and try new things in the kitchen, I have to show y'all that I do the same as well. So with that being said, this first recipe is gonna be avocado toast. But before you say, girl, really avocado toast? It's actually avocado toast with a few twists. The first twist is that we're gonna combine the avocado with some edamame. And if you're unfamiliar with edamame, they are soybeans and they're packed with protein. I'll share the other twist I made to this recipe when we assemble the toast, but I just started out by defrosting the edamame in warm water, as you saw, and then I added them to a blender with avocado, salt, black pepper, garlic powder, and lime juice. And if you want a texture that is a bit more smooth, feel free to add this to a food processor versus a blender. For the bread, I went to the farmer's market recently and I purchased some whole wheat sourdough bread. Normally whole wheat bread can be a bit thick and this one was just perfect. Now here's where the rest of the twists come in, because we're going to sprinkle it with some cumin, which I had previously heard just really takes avocado toast to the next level. And then I also added some chili crunch with a drizzle of maple syrup. And I just had the toast with some pea shoots and a little cutie. But this combo is seriously 10 out of 10. And I would highly recommend that you make it next week. You will have to make the edamame and avocado mash fresh each time, but I promise you it is so worth it. So I've been seeing quite a few people take potatoes, smash them, crisp them up on the stove, and use them as the base of a meal. And I remembered that I had some purple sweet potatoes in the fridge that I had ingredient prepped. So I wanted to give that whole crispy smashed potato idea a try. And if you've learned anything about me from my previous videos and meal ideas, I like for my meals to be balanced. So I always try to have some sort of carb, a healthy fat, protein, and fiber. I'll at least have 3 of the 4 in a meal. So with that in mind, my source of protein for this meal is grated tofu, which I seasoned with my tofu egg seasoning blend, and that has ingredients like nutritional yeast, garlic and onion powder, smoked paprika, curry powder, turmeric, salt, and black pepper. And then I transferred that to a baking sheet and put it in the oven for about 5 to 7 minutes. So while the tofu was in the oven, the potato was in the air fryer, I knew I wanted to make some sort of sauce with this, so I decided to make a chimichurri sauce. So I combined some grated garlic, chopped cilantro and parsley, Fresno peppers, avocado oil, red wine vinegar, salt, and black pepper. So now everything is finished being prepped, so it was time to assemble. I just added a layer of some cashew cheese, followed by the tofu, which I then sprinkled with some kalonamic. This is also known as black salt, and it gives dishes an egg-like flavor. And then I topped the mountain of grated tofu with the chimichurri. When I tell you it pays to try new things in the kitchen, it really does. This combo of flavors that I have never tried before was so delicious, and I'm looking forward to making this again. Now this next recipe, it's not new, but the first time I made it, it was an epic fail. So while I was making it this time, I was hoping and praying that it turned out right. We are making a batch of homemade granola, and I have 2 goals with this batch. 1, that it is chunky, and 2, that it tastes good. So right now I'm combining some avocado oil, maple syrup, almond butter, vanilla extract, cinnamon, and salt. That's where a good amount of the flavor in this granola is going to come from. Now for the dry combo, I added some gluten-free oatmeal and a ton of nuts and seeds to a bowl. You can use whatever nuts and seeds you prefer, but I went in with sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, walnuts, and hemp seeds, just making this an omega-3 and omega-6 rich batch of granola. Next, I added the almond butter and maple syrup mixture to the oats, and I just mixed that together really well until each and every dry ingredient was coated. After that, I just transferred it to a parchment paper lined baking sheet. And what I've learned for chunky granola is that in order to get those large chunks, one, you need a binder, but two, you want to kind of pack everything together. So press it down on the baking sheet so that everything sticks together. And I baked this in the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. However, it did continue to firm up as I let it cool. So it looks good, but you're probably wondering, did I like it? The answer is absolutely. It was hands down some of the best granola, if not the best granola I've ever had. And I'm not just saying that because I made it, but it was just really, really delicious. So much so that I had to enjoy it immediately. I made a fruit and yogurt bowl with some blackberries, cherries, and wild blueberries, as well as some of that granola, some almond butter, and some high protein dairy-free yogurt. This next meal can be meal prepped, or it can be put together quickly while you're getting ready for work before you head out to the gym. I'm making a banana pudding inspired chia seed pudding. If you've never had chia seeds before, they must be added to a liquid before consuming, and they'll expand in that liquid over time and create a pudding gel-like consistency. Normally I would add some sort of sweetener like a maple syrup, but I decided to skip it this time, and I'll show you why in a few. I put the pudding together before my workout, and by the time I was back and had finished getting ready, it was time to enjoy it. Now, the reason why I opted out of adding a sweetener to the chia seed pudding is because I'm using bananas as my sweetener for this recipe, and I added some of that to this vanilla protein yogurt. Next, I added the chia seed pudding, followed by the rest of the mashed banana, and of course, some of the granola that I had made the day before. If you want, you could add a few vanilla wafers instead of the granola for a pudding that is closer to banana pudding, but this was really delicious and a nutrient-dense breakfast that kept me satisfied for a while. Now, if you watched my video from last week, you are probably wondering, girl, where is that blueberry oatmeal loaf recipe that you were hyping up? But don't worry, I just had to save the best for last. Now, transparently, baking is not necessarily my ministry, okay? Cooking is. However, I did challenge myself to bake more often this year, and I have decided to start with some recipes that are on the easier end of things. So if you're like me, this is going to be one that you will want to make. For this, you will need 2 bowls. In one bowl, you're going to add oat flour, which you saw me make by blending the gluten-free rolled oats. I also added salt, baking powder, baking soda, and cinnamon. Whisk that together and then move on to what we'll be using as the binder for this recipe, and that's a combination of more mashed bananas, some vanilla extract, applesauce, which is our egg substitute for this. Also going to use some maple syrup and oil. I specifically used avocado oil, but feel free to use whatever neutral flavored oil you have on hand. After combining that really well, I added it to the oatmeal flour mix along with some frozen wild blueberries. If you have frozen blueberries, just go ahead and use them. But if you have fresh, that's even better. And I'll show you why once we go to cut into these. However, I'm a huge advocate of just using what you have to get the job done. Next, I lined a loaf pan with parchment paper and I sprayed it with a bit of avocado oil, transferred the batter to it, and I put this in the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. Now, Now, one tip would be, because everyone's oven is completely different, you'll want to test the readiness of this loaf with either a fork, a knife, or a toothpick, and you'll want whatever it is that you use to come back clean. That's how you'll know that it's ready. And I almost forgot to mention that you don't have to use this for a loaf. You can use this batter mix for muffins as well. I let this cool for about 15 minutes before cutting into it, and I was able to get around 4 to 6 servings of this, just depending on how large my slices were and how hungry I am at the time. Oh yeah, and as you see, the frozen blueberries fell to the bottom. So if you want the berries to be spread out more evenly, use fresh. But I mean, it was still delicious, so you could also just use what you have. And when I go to enjoy this, I just have it with a dollop of some protein yogurt along with some homemade blueberry jam. And with the leftover servings, I like to freeze them and just put them in a reusable bag. I do add a layer of parchment paper in between each piece so that when I want to enjoy them, I can just grab it, warm it up, and they're already separated. So those are some of the meals that I've been making for breakfast recently. I truly hope that you enjoyed this video, that you give the recipes a try, and that I see you here next week, because my next video is going to be centered around easy one-pot meals for a busy weeknight. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.